Hi, Haunted Family, and welcome back to another episode. Ghostly fireballs are not a unique occurrence. They have been sighted all around the world, from the Hessdalen lights of Norway to the Naga fireballs along the Mekong. They go by a variety of names: will-o-wisp, fool's fire, friar's lantern, hinky punk, hirodama, chirbati, min light. They can be found in a variety of locations, but in this episode, my focus will primarily be with fireballs as they relate to graves and graveyards. The topic for this episode actually sprung from a story a friend shared on Facebook. So a local legend from the small town that he's from. I'll share that legend, and then I'll share my personal experience with fireballs. Sit back and enjoy the show. Story 1. Danbury Ghost Fireball. People in Danbury, Nebraska have reportedly been seeing a fireball rising up from a grave in the local cemetery and chasing people dating back to 1894. In a March 15, 1953, Sunday Journal and Star, a woman reported that she was walking out of Happy Hollow Canyon when the fireball popped up out of the grave and started chasing her. She said it was floating about 8 feet off the ground. As with the fireball's history, when a person reaches a building or a wall, the fireball then jumps over the building and disappears. The grave that the fireball was suspected of rising up out of was found to be filled with coyote bones. The town historian, Mrs. Celia Walters, who is also a schoolteacher and amateur folklorist, said that John C. Townley, who saw the Hamburg fireball, as it is also known, back in 1890, described it as a light similar to a gasoline mantle lantern. The Hamburg Cemetery, where the fireball pops up out of, is on a hill about a mile north of the main highway. The following news article is actually what my friend shared on Facebook. It appeared in the Kansas City Journal, September 1897. Ball of fire haunts a grave. The dead man played cards for a woman, won, and was murdered. A lonely grave on the edge of a barren orchard, a half-mile south of Brodhead, Kentucky, contains the remains of the first man murdered in Rockcastle County. The grave, some 30 feet in height, which borders a seldom-traveled passageway, a more lonely spot with more dreary surroundings, is hard to imagine. The grave referred to is marked by a sandstone rock, 3 feet in width, and bears the following inscription in rudely carved characters. 1873. David Everhart. Was born October. Murdered September 22nd, 1810. There's a tragic story connected with the death of Everhart, and is well known to the generation that has all but passed away, and, in this manner, has been handed down to the present time. Everhart came to Kentucky from North Carolina with a party of adventurers, and, for a time, they dwelt in Rockcastle County. Whether they had been attracted by the fabulous stories of the Swift silver mine, said to have been located in that section of the state, tradition speaks of Everhart as a wild, dissipated man who was wholly without fear, and as a gambler who would stake his life upon a turn of a card. Everhart and his companions erected near the railroad water tank now stands at Brodhead, a rude log shanty, remnants of which are yet to be seen. From there, they would daily sally forth to prospect for silver. One of the party, a man by the name of Wise, had with him his daughter Mary, who is said to have been a girl of rare beauty. Everhart and a man named Cyrus Thomas were suitors for the girl's favors, but her fickleness kept each of them in uncertainty, and in this way a fierce enmity was engendered between the two men. Finally, they agreed to play a game of cards for the possession of the girl. The loser not only had to renounce any claim he might have upon her, but was to take his departure from the country as well. This arrangement was agreed upon by all parties, and the momentous game was played in the log shanty after the day's work was done, the girl herself being a witness to it. The exciting game it was, both men keeping well together until the final deal, when Everhart, turning a winning trump, which gave him the game and the girl. This angered Thomas, and he sprang upon Everhart, stabbing him with a glittering knife. At this juncture, the lights were extinguished, and no one, of course, knows exactly what happened. But passers-by the shanty the next morning discovered Everhart's body, covered with wounds, lying upon the threshold. His companions had disappeared and were never heard from again. The dead man was buried in a lonely spot, spoken of above, and, some years afterwards, his relatives from North Carolina caused the rude stone to be erected, which marks his grave today. One remarkable feature, in connection with the last resting place of this unfortunate man, is that the grave has never sunk a foot in all the years since it was first filled. This is no surprise to superstitious mountaineers. However, that murdered man's grave never sinks. The vicinity of the lone grave is said to be haunted, and many gruesome stories of unnatural occurrences transpire there. No one will willingly be caught in the locality after nightfall, the best men in the county concurring in the opinion that the place is frequently visited by visitors from the other side. A favorite story in this line tells of a ball of fire which burns steadily and brightly at the head of the grave every night. No one has ever had the courage to approach the spot near enough to solve the mystery. It is also told of a shadowy man bearing a coffin upon his shoulders, emerging once a year from the orchard, traveling hastily across the open space, disappearing near the forsaken grave. Now, until my friend found this article, he had never heard of this story, really. And now they're kind of on a mission, you could say, to find this man's grave. He's got friends who've kind of, hunted and hiked all over that area, and they've not seen the marker, but, that's actually to be expected from a headstone from the 1800s that was just carved in sandstone, because sandstone erodes in the elements very quickly, especially with as much rain and moisture that we get. So, maybe we'll give you an update at some point if it's located. Okay, so for my personal story. It was right before my grandfather's actual funeral service. Like the night before, maybe 2 nights before. Me and my sister and several cousins was sitting on the back porch, on a porch swing, sitting around on the porch. I was sitting on the porch swing with several other people of a great aunt's house, and they lived, way out in the country. And this was on my grandmother's side of the family, not on my grandfather's side of the family, because my grandfather wasn't originally from our state. He moved here because he met our grandmother. And so he was going to be interred in one of her family's cemeteries that was, no, it wasn't even the cemetery behind this house, but the cemetery behind this house was one of the family cemeteries. And this little cemetery had a couple, great aunts and my grandparents' oldest child who passed away as an infant, and just a couple more graves. Very small cemetery. And you actually have to, walk across the little field and a tiny, tiny little creek, not just a tiny thing, and then up a hill to get to it. So we're sitting there, we're just talking, and we hear a noise on the hill, and suddenly we see this big ball of fire, and like probably larger than a beach ball, come tumbling off the hill. And it's making noise. It's not talking. And we're all just sort of sitting there staring at each other, and the older cousins are like, whoa. And the younger ones are, we're starting to get a little more freaked out, but it's one of those things where you don't want to move, and suddenly one of the adults comes out and they usher us all in, and we're told to stay in for the rest of the evening. And come to find out later that this is actually something that has been spotted numerous times, usually around the time that somebody in the family has died, and that the voice we were hearing was actually the voice of somebody who is buried in that little cemetery. And they know this because the person was deaf, not born deaf, but became deaf due to illness, so she could speak, but because of her deafness, her voice she spoke with a bit of an accent because of her hearing impairment, her deafness. Still to this day, one of the craziest things I've ever witnessed. And I feel kind of, odd even talking about it. So have any of you all ever experienced anything similar? If you have, I would love to hear from you. Let's connect. If you have a experience of seeing a fireball in a cemetery or near a grave, either comment down below or send me an email and let's talk about this. If you like this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. And thanks for listening. I really appreciate it.